Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Whoever you are and wherever you come from, for this hour, we here are one gathered congregation and all are welcome. Please rise in body or spirit to join in singing our musical call to worship, Sia Hamba, hymn number 1030, in our Singing the Journey, or the Teal hymnal. That got us started with some good energy, I think. Yeah. My name is Kim Stewart, and I use she, her pronouns. I have brownish hair, and I'm wearing a pink sweater. This is my second year as a lay leader, and I've been attending KUUF since 2018, which was a year after I moved to Washington from North Dakota. I was looking for a community, and I found it here. Our guest speaker this morning speaks regularly each month from our pulpit here at KUUF, the Reverend Carol McKinley. She lives in Olympia, where she is the UU congregation's affiliated community minister. If you are visiting us this morning, we invite you to participate as you feel comfortable. If you're here in person, we look forward to welcoming you after the service during our coffee hour. If you are attending online, please introduce yourself in the chat. For those of you here in the sanctuary, it's important to note that we regularly have 15 to 30 people attending online. So our community is much larger than those assembled here. Either way, in person or online, we are glad you're here. If you're here in the sanctuary this morning, please silence your electronic devices. The announcements are available in our weekly email newsletter, The Candle. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the Aboriginal territory of the Suquamish people. Expert fishermen, canoe builders, and basket weavers, the Suquamish live in harmony with the lands and waterways along Washington's Central Salish Sea, as they have for thousands of years. Here, the Suquamish live and protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations, as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855.
Good morning, I'm Reverend Carol McKinley, and this morning I have white hair. I guess every morning. And I'm wearing glasses with red rims, and I have a jacket on designed with Chinese design in colors of orange, greens, blacks, and cream to honor this first day of fall. Our opening words today are from the Reverend Kendall Gibbons. She writes, "Out of communities of diverse heritage and belief, we come together to share our hope and to create good in this world. The prophets of all traditions and times have taught us that we are called to mercy, generosity, and care, and to be great is to serve. May the power of our various faiths sustain us in this work, that we may be the hands of holy creativity and justice, and together to build a better world." Good morning. It is good to be together.
That's the law of the giants, right? Is that you just lift the mic, right? Okay. We welcome Margaret Wilder to come forward to light our chalice. Margaret has been attending for several years, signing our membership book on the same day as fellow member Bones Barone. She is a retired massage therapist who's been spiritually journeying her entire life and feels at home at KUUF. She co-facilitates Chalice Circle number 10 with Bonner Sams. Join me now in lighting our chalice. If you have your own chalice or candle at home, please light it as I read our chalice lighting words by Maureen Killeran. As the kindling of this chalice calls us to community, let there be light. As the flames of this chalice remind us of our values, let there be light. As the glow of this chalice encourages us to hope, let there be light. Please join me in the spoken affirmation. The words will appear on the screen. We gather as a caring community, seeking life's deeper meanings. We value diversity and affirm the worth of all living things. We strive to speak truth in love, to act for justice, to grow in spirit, and to care for the earth. We celebrate with open hearts and minds the creative power that sustains and transforms us. Our next hymn is The Oneness of Everything. It covers all the bases in UUism. Are you looking for humanism? It's here. Looking for God? Yep. Looking for a song about the interdependent web? It's in there. Fourth principle too. Looking for our first source, fifth source, sixth source? Oh, do you want a bit of process theology? Howdy. It's all covered in it. Our choir will sing the first verse of hymn 1052, The Oneness of Everything, from our Singing the Journey hymnal, after which we are all welcome to sing the remaining 2 verses along with them. As always, the lyrics will appear on our sanctuary monitors.
Good morning. My name is Melinda, and today I am wearing dark blue with a white and blue striped cardigan. I'm going to be telling you a story today about how the flaming chalice came to be. Has anyone ever wondered why we and every other UU church begin things by lighting a chalice? We light a chalice as a spiritual practice, but how did it begin? Where did the chalice come from anyway? Well, to answer that question, I want to share a story with you. And for this story, we must travel back in time, all the way to 1941 and World War II. During that time, a lot of people living in Eastern Europe, Unitarians, Jews, and others, were in danger of being put in prison or killed by Nazi soldiers. A group of Unitarians came together in Boston, Massachusetts, to form the Unitarian Service Committee. Once the committee was formed, they created a plan to help people in danger from the Nazis. A man by the name of Charles Joy was the director of the service committee and also happened to be a Unitarian minister. Now, in those days during war, danger was everywhere and lots of people were running away from their own countries. In fact, Reverend Joy was in charge of a group of secret agents and messengers who worked to find safe routes in Eastern Europe for people to use as they tried to escape. But there was a problem. You see, oftentimes the people who were escaping and the people who wanted to help didn't speak the same language. And this made it very hard when they were trying to find each other. Without a way to know who was safe, the escape plans could have quickly fallen apart, but Reverend Joy had an idea. You see, disguises and secret symbols and midnight runs across guarded borders were the means of freedom in those days. So Reverend Joy decided that the best way to help and to keep people safe was to create an official symbol or picture to help those who were escaping and members of the service committee identify each other. Reverend Joy found a very talented Dutch artist named Hans Deutsch, who had already escaped and asked for his help. Reverend Joy asked Deutsch to create a symbol that the secret agents could add to the fake papers they were making. This way, the people who were escaping and members of the service committee could identify each other. Reverend Joy told Hans to make the symbols look official, to give dignity and importance to them, and at the same time to symbolize the spirit of our work. When a document may keep a man out of jail, give him standing with governments and police, it is important that it look important. So Hans got to work creating a symbol that he thought would be impressive to the government and the police, and that would be easy and fast for the service committee to print onto their papers to make them look important. For his drawing, Deutsch borrowed an old symbol of strength and freedom from Czechoslovakia, a chalice with a flame. And just like that, the symbol of our flaming chalice was born. Many years later, the flaming chalice became the symbol of Unitarian Universalist groups all over the world. And by the early 1970s, enough Unitarian Universalists had heard the story of the flaming chalice symbol that they began to light a flaming chalice as part of their worship service in their churches. Over the years, this practice has spread over most of the United States and Canada. So what does it mean to have a symbol like this? Well, one thing it means is that wherever you see a flaming chalice, you know there are Unitarians and Universalists nearby. Having a symbol also can remind you of what's most important to you, and sometimes a reminder can make a very big difference. When we see people light the chalice or we light one at home, we are inviting in a spiritual practice that reminds us of the story of the flaming chalice and the strength it has given people for hundreds of years, and that we are a faith of deed, not creeds. Or in other words, we are a faith of practice or of doing things. In the week and days ahead, may all of us, kids and adults alike, have the courage to put our beliefs and values into practice and carry them into our living and loving. Please join me now, rising in body or spirit, to sing our children off to the Matin building.
We gather as a religious community to give each one of us a place where we can do the work of many. Together, our light is much brighter than a solitary flame. Now is the time in our service when we share in the sacred act of giving, an expression of gratitude transformed into generosity that breathes life into our mission. As part of our mission that inspires us to act on our beliefs, we share our weekly offering with a local nonprofit agency providing services within our larger community. Our charitable giving recipient for the month of September is Kitsap Homes of Compassion. In a moment, our ushers will move among us with baskets to collect the offering. Contributions placed in the basket will go to Kitsap Homes of Compassion. If you would like your offering to be used for KUF, please use one of the envelopes provided to you with your order of service when you came into the sanctuary. Electronic contributions may also be submitted by scanning the QR code printed on your order of service with your cell phone. For those joining us online, you may go to our website, kuf.org, and select the Giving tab for PayPal and mailing information. If this is your first time at KUF, feel free to let the basket pass you by. Your presence is presence enough. Let there be an offering to strengthen and sustain our beloved community, which is sacred to us. Let us enjoy a gift of music by Lucia Smith as she performs This Is Me by Benj Pasek and Justin Paul.
I am not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say, 'cause we don't want your broken parts. Learn to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say, no one will love you as you are. But I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. When the sharpest words wanna cut me down, I'm gonna send a flood, gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me, look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen, I make no apologies. This is me, oh, 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 oh. Another round of bullets hits my skin. Fire away, 'cause today I won't let the shame sink in. We are bursting through the barricades and reaching for the sun. We are warriors, yeah, that's what we become. I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. When the sharpest words wanna cut me down, I'm gonna send a flood, gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am bruised. Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apologies. This is me. And I know that I deserve your love. There's nothing I'm not worthy of. This is me.
Yeah, that was beautiful. You might not have been able to see, there are tears scattered around. I think you really moved people. Thank you. Now is the time for our joys and sorrows. When shared together, our joys are amplified and our sorrows lessened. Our first joy is from Ellie, who writes, "My joy that this first day of autumn is so beautiful." Megan Shepard writes, "My sorrow is my dad got a cancer diagnosis in August, and although the outlook is good, it is his fourth time having to do the cancer fight." Michael Harris writes, "I'm still debating if this is a joy or sorrow, but my parents had a Catholic mass said for me and my intentions." I think, may we aspire to be like Michael, really? Tiffany Drake writes, "My joy is my friend of over 15 years is coming to visit me, or visit for the next week. She flew in from Wisconsin. I haven't seen her in 13 years. Our last joy is from Dominic, who writes, "My joy is for the opportunity to see my good friend Matt Haver perform with his troupe at BCT, Bremerton Community Theater, in Run for Your Life. Tonight is your last opportunity to see it." Okay. Nice. For those of you at home, it's funny. So. And we light one last candle for those joys and sorrows that are still too tender to share.
As we hold in our hearts all those joys and sorrows shared this morning, let us come together in the spirit of prayer and meditation with Wendell Berry's poem, "The Peace of Wild Things." When despair grows in me and I wake in the middle of the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, where the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things and do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting for their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world, and I am free. Amen. Now let us join together while you remain seated in singing Spirit of Life. It's hymn number 123 in the gray hymnal.
Our first reading is from Andrew Whitehead, the co-director for the Center for the Study of Religion and American Culture at Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis, who writes, "White Christian nationalism is a cultural framework asserting that civic life in the United States should be organized according to a particular form of conservative Christianity. In addition to the standard Christian religious and theological beliefs, Christian nationalism brings with it a host of cultural assumptions about who really matters and who should be in charge of life in the United States, primarily white Christian citizens. Christian nationalism is not interested in a government for the people, by the people, but rather for a particular people, by a particular people. Christian nationalism weakens the church by demanding it seek earthly, self-interested power rather than seeking to support and serve the marginalized."
Our second reading is from the Reverend Dr. Forrest Church. He was the late theologian and minister of All Souls Unitarian Church in New York City. And he wrote in his book, American Creed, a Spiritual and Patriotic Primer. America is not a Christian nation. It is, however, a religious one. The founders recognized that freedom is a morally neutral quality defined by the objects to which it is devoted. Without a mooring, our liberties run the risk of lapsing into license. The American Creed does not play favorites when it comes to theology. Atheists receive the same protections under the First Amendment that fundamentalists do. It does, however, rest on a moral foundation. To abridge one's religious freedom cuts against the American grain, but no more decisively than to exercise freedom without a sense of moral responsibility. Let us hold a moment of reflection on Dr. Church's words, followed by our post-reflection music. Thank you, choir. Indeed, today we do turn the star wheel to autumn. Thank you for that. The Reverend Dr. Forrest Church, the author of that second reading from the American Creed, has been called America's public theologian. In that book, Church defines the American Creed as comprised of distinctive elements of American identity that were first formulated in the Declaration of Independence: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He emphasized that nowhere in that document or in the Constitution is there mention of this nation having a specific religious identity. In fact, the only reference to religion in those foundational documents is in Article 6 of the Constitution. No religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. The role of government is to ensure that everyone in this nation be treated equally, justly, and with recognition of their full humanity in order to enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And yes, I think we would all agree that the fulfillment of that role has been at times imperfect. After all, fully living into the American Creed has never been easy. Resistance has opposed change since the founding of this nation. It influenced the writing of the Constitution, which denied the full humanity and equal rights to Black persons and to women. It led to laws that controlled not only those immigrants from Ireland, Italy, Central Europe, China, Japan, Mexico, Central America, but restricted the rights of this country's original native inhabitants. We have seen that when the status quo in this country is threatened by change such as immigration that brings people from all over the world to these shores, upsetting the balance of power that for generations has been held by one dominant group. That group can gather their followers to protect the well-entrenched status quo and resist any change. Now today, that status quo is again threatened, and religion is being used once again as a means of defense and offense. But make no mistake, there is nothing many of us would recognize as religious in these efforts. Christian nationalism is that movement, specifically white male Christian nationalism, since the organizers are predominantly white and male, reflecting the hyper-masculinity of Christian nationalism. So I will repeat those words: white, male, Christian citizens. Picture, if you will, all those who don't fit into those categories. Are you a person of color? Biracial? Many in this sanctuary this morning may identify as white and are citizens. But do you, as many Unitarian Universalists, consider yourself Christian? Like many of you, I do not. So where does that leave those who are Jewish, Buddhist, Muslims, Hindu, Sikh, Wiccan, atheist? And who is a Christian? I've always understood a Christian to be one who believes Jesus to be the Son of God, a Jewish rabbi that taught that love of God, love of neighbor, charity, forgiveness of those who have wronged you were what it meant to be a faithful person. Christian nationalism, in contrast, is not about love, care for the underprivileged, or forgiveness. It is, in fact, a gross distortion of Jesus' teachings, using the language and the symbols of Christianity, the cross, Christian prayer, or a saying, Jesus saves. It is understandable that this fusion of national identity with a religious identity can confuse any casual observer. This past month, I attended the Symposium, an annual event presented by our Unitarian Universalist Seminary in Berkeley, the Starr King School for the Ministry. This year, the symposium topic was the Christian nationalist threat to democracy and the church. During the 3-day symposium, speakers sorted out the history that lay behind the current upswelling of Christian nationalism, why it attracts followers, how this political movement endangers democracy and the freedom to practice the religion of one's choice, and how those of us committed to a liberating democracy can respond. The merging of national and Christian identities has long been a cover for white supremacy and racial subjugation. Various forms of it have appeared in the past. It is seen in the doctrine of discovery, that 15th century document that claims all lands discovered by white European explorers to be Christian lands, and condemned the cultural and the religious practices and traditions practiced by indigenous peoples. It has surfaced when certain elements have threatened to upset the social and the power balance that those in power would like to maintain. The Ku Klux Klan was organized using rhetoric steeped in Christian language and the image of the burning cross to terrorize Black residents during Reconstruction and after. One major clash happened in the 20th century, just less than 100 years ago. The Scopes trial, commonly referred to as the Scopes monkey trial, occurred in 1925 when the Tennessee high school teacher, John Scopes, was accused of violating a state law that forbade the teaching of human evolution in any state-funded school. Now, unfortunately, this seemingly extinct challenge to teaching the scientific theory of evolution has not gone away, because it's occurring in this year as well. Some states are requiring the teaching of the Judeo-Christian biblical creation story in conjunction with Darwinian theory. And efforts to include one interpretation of religious teaching continues. We're familiar with Louisiana's legislation requiring the posting of the Judeo-Christian 10 Commandments in every state school classroom. We're familiar with efforts to control women's reproductive choices using religion as a reason. So it is understandable why that label, Christian nationalism, can be confusing. But it has no resemblance to the Christianity that was an part of my family's life as I was growing up. Each Sunday, I went with my family to our Presbyterian church and Sunday school, and of course, I attended church camp on Lake Coeur d'Alene during the summer. And at that church, I was taught that my responsibility as a Christian was to love God and follow Jesus' teachings of being kind, loving our neighbors, and caring for the less fortunate. Now, although as an adult I left that denomination, I still value what I learned at the Manitou Presbyterian Church and where I saw practice, and of course, not always practiced perfectly. As our minister, the Reverend Dr. Everett Topp, would tell us, that's why it's called practice. So my experience with other Christian churches, as well as with Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, and indigenous practices, has deepened my understanding of what it means to be a person of faith. I appreciate how all of our traditions share many common values, honoring a God known by many names, caring for this creation, supporting and serving the marginalized, and striving to be the best person we can be. Christian nationalism, in contrast, demeans and weakens Christianity. It's a reactive political movement that is all about maintaining order. It asserts that civic life, not just religious, but political and community life, should be organized according to a particular form of conservative Christianity built on the expectation that white Christian citizens should be in charge of life in this country. By demanding that power be reserved for that particular group, Americans' white citizens are assured that they are then members of a very privileged class. So I'd like to just step back a moment and draw the distinction between patriotism and nationalism. Patriotism is love of one's country. We might express it by displaying the flag at our home, singing the Star-Spangled Banner before a ball game, celebrating the 4th of July with flags, parades, fireworks, and picnics. Nationalism, on the other hand, is not an expression of love of country. It says allegiance to one particular understanding of country, demands supremacy over all other allegiances, including one's religion. By merging nationalism with Christian language and imagery, the movement holds a common identity to attract and hold its followers. I think it's very important to keep in mind that Christian nationalism is not about religion. It is about power and control, using language that inspires fear and distrust of government, urging people to give up on our system. It is rooted in several myths that followers accept as, and excuse the ironic use of the word, gospel truth. That first myth is America is a Christian nation, chosen by God to be the new Jerusalem. The second myth, God's providential hand is evident in American history, in its glorious past, and in today's politics. Third, American exceptionalism is real. This country's success is part of God's plan. That saying, God is on our side, is affirmed. As most of us learned in our high school history class, this nation's founders went to great lengths to ensure that America was not a Christian nation and did not adhere to any religion, as evidenced in that Article 6 of the Constitution. But from the perspective of Christian nationalists, the common good would include having the federal government declare that the United States is indeed a Christian nation, then develop legislation built only around Christian values, but only as the Christian nationalists interpret those values. Strict laws on divorce, no gay marriage, no critical race theory teaching, no health care for transgender persons, severe restrictions and prohibitions on non-Christian immigrants into this country. No, Christian nationalism's vision for our country is not to be the democratic republic imagined by this nation's founders. Christian nationalism is not interested in a government of the people, by the people, but rather a government for a particular people, by a particular people. Christian nationalism distorts and demeans Christianity by demanding that it seek earthly, self-interested power rather than seeking to support and serve all persons, especially the marginalized. No one draws the line between Christian nationalism and Christianity more clearly than the Texas State Representative James Tallarico. In addition to serving in the Texas legislature, Tallarico is a devout Christian, and he is a seminarian studying to be a Presbyterian minister. In a sermon at his home church in Austin, Tallarico begins by saying there is nothing Christian about Christian nationalism. He uses biblical references and expands on that statement. He emphasizes that while Christianity liberates, Christian nationalism controls. While Christianity urges social change, Christian nationalism pushes to maintain the status quo so one privileged group holds on to resources and civic power. The Jewish Rabbi Jesus, says Tallarico, called for people to practice radical love by turning the world upside down, challenging the oppressive power structure. Jesus taught that radical love means sharing, not greed, peace, not violence, care for the poor, for making sure all children, all people are housed, clothed, and fed, not exploitation of those people. It means sharing power, not having it hoarded by a few. It means holding true to an ancient teaching to love one's God and one's neighbor as oneself. A teaching, emphasizes James Tallarico, shared by all our religions in the world. Andrew Whitehead, the scholar whose words you heard in the earlier reading, said that in contrast to what many learn to be Christian beliefs, Christian nationalism holds up three idols, power, fear, and violence. They are a distortion of Christianity's understanding of God, of Jesus, and of the gospel message. They are a distortion of the realities of living in our diverse, democratic society where deeper understanding, collaboration, and compromise are needed for effective, peaceful living in community. James Tallarico called the ability to share and cooperate humanity's superpower, a superpower that thrives in the diversity we see all around us. He said, we see it expressed in the wonderful creativity we find in the world's art, in music, in our cultures, and in nature itself. Yes, despite its promises and its benefits, democracy is, if not often, messy, very frustrating, and also very time-consuming. Many of us have seen this to be true in our lifetimes, as social justice movements through the decades regularly threaten the status quo and the balance of power. Emancipation, the women's movement, the civil rights movement, gay liberation, and most recently, transgender equality and liberation. All of these justice movements have incited resistance, often violent resistance, from those who would hold or create a narrow interpretation of biblical and Christian teaching, especially about the place in society of people who do not look like those in power. To solve these very irritating problems presented by justice movements, Christian nationalism chooses to use the power to repress them. James Tallarico calls this the virus the virus of religious extremism and calls upon all people of faith, and that means all faiths, to resist this dangerous movement by living the teachings of their open, inclusive faiths, sharing beloved stories and traditions and practices to heal and nurture our souls. Peace, hope, and love always need strengthening. And coming together in a community of love and faith, whatever that community might be called, Presbyterian, Muslim, Catholic, Jewish, Hindu, Unitarian, Universalist, is the best way to combat the religious extremism virus. Our communities of faith are, after all, where we come to be reminded that true, authentic religious practices of love of others, welcoming the stranger, sharing life's abundance with each other, and caring for the poor and the persecuted are true religious teachings. Amanda Taylor, author of How to End Christian Nationalism, was one of the Star King Symposium speakers. She heads the group Christians Against Christian Nationalism. And, said Taylor with a laugh before her Unitarian Universalist audience, you don't have to identify as a Christian to use their resources. They're open to anyone. This organization offers suggestions for better ways to understand the threats that this reactionary movement poses for democracies and the way to help our friends and neighbors become more aware. She urges concerned persons to pay particular attention to what is happening in our public schools. This is where efforts are being made to promote the Christian nation mythology about the exceptionalism of this country, to promote only Judeo-Christian values, ban books they find objectionable, and to promote bills like the recent Don't Say Gay legislation in Florida. That website, ChristiansAgainstChristianNationalism.com, offers many suggestions for ways to respond to this anti-democracy, anti-religious movement. At the end of the 3 days of the symposium, I reflected on what I had learned from the excellent and wise presenters. I found the words that really remained with me were spoken by Pastor Jacqueline Duhart, Star King's Director of Spiritual Development. She reminded us that democracy is always threatened and that we, as people of a progressive faith, do not have the option to give up, drop out, or run away from the challenges brought by those who would nurture fear and promote autocracy. We must hold up our values to honor the worth and value of each person, continue to advocate for the protection of all people's rights and for democracy itself. Let us think of ourselves, said Pastor Duhart, as spiritual first responders, run toward, not from. I would suggest that we might practice being spiritual first responders by supporting our Christian and non-Christian neighbors as each one of us works to ensure the free practice of religion in this democratic republic. And in doing so, let us always be reminded that we are all becoming more human by connecting with our human and our non-human world through love, kindness, and compassion. We are, after all we have. So join with others to form your own spiritual first responder unit. Spread the good news that faith helps us transform ourselves strengthening us to bring more love to all those with whom we share this world. And together, there is nothing we cannot do. Amen, and so may it be. And now, I invite you to rise in body or spirit. Sing our closing hymn, number 1018. It's in the teal hymnal. Come and go with me. The order of service, by the way, gave the incorrect hymn number. So the lyrics will appear right here in the sanctuary on the screen. As we close today's service, please exit through the foyer, and then coffee and tea will be served there. And you're welcome to bring your beverage and snacks back into the sanctuary if you wish. And I want to correct the wrong date posted online in the candle for the Social Justice Committee picnic. It is not today. So don't show up. But rather tomorrow on Monday, 3 p.m. at one of the shelters at Illahee State Park. Apologize for any confusion. And now we have our closing words and the extinguishing of our chalice from Maya Angelou. She writes, "History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift up your eyes upon the day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream." Amen, and so may it be.